Hi there, my name is Renee Hobbs, and today's date is Wednesday, September 24th, 2014, and I'm here with COM 410 at the Harrington School of Communication and Media, the COM 410 UnClassroom, and we're focusing on digital learning in Rhode Island this week, and I have been happily watching students getting their reflective essays onto their WordPress blogs, beginning to use Twitter as a networking tool for us to learn from each other, and students are using the Flipgrid as a way to be in a dialogic space with each other. So I'd like to talk to you, Sarah, and to you, Alan, a little bit about what's been your experience with these different tools that we've been using. What's your perception of the highlights and lowlights of WordPress, Twitter, Flipgrid, and that crazy Etherpad? What do you like and hate about using these tools as part of this class?
I like the Flipgrid because, it forces people to work on their public speaking skills, and it's fun to watch other people's, because I'd rather look at somebody's Flipgrid than read their form,
Yeah.
So I like Flipgrid so far.
One of the things I like about Flipgrid is just what you said, Alan, which is I think it is a really good tool for supporting people's public speaking skills.
Right.
And I also think it also makes you pay attention to the frame in terms of the lighting, in terms of the how it looks. I feel like that's an important part. One of the things that's really cool about Flipgrid is we'll be able to reuse little clips of these things we're building as part of our own communication outreach. So it's possible that a really great little minute-long Flipgrid is going to have viral value as we think about our campaign. Sarah, what's been your highlights and lowlights using WordPress and Twitter and Flipgrid and Etherpad?
Did you see my?
I did.
Okay, good, because I was like, I wrote a lot about it. The WordPress I didn't talk about probably because I've used it a ton of times for you, and I'm like, where's my page again? Like, I can't really maneuver it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my drawback. I love the Titan Pad. I love the collaboration of sharing ideas and being able to reread them. It's kind of like a note-taking thing for me.
Yeah.
I can refer back. The Flipgrid is intense. You have to tape yourself 3 or 4 times to finally get the information
Right.
to the audience. So it's tricky, but I like a challenge, so that's cool. Twitter, I like Twitter, but I only use it for my educational life or identity. So.
Okay. So we're gonna continue to develop our competencies here, but your essay about Flipgrid definitely gives us something to think about, and the idea of thinking about other uses of Flipgrid that. Right now, we're using it inside our class for just, the 15 of us who are enrolled in the class. I wonder how Flipgrid might be useful as we think about our outreach. So maybe we'll have to do some more brainstorming about that. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen with you, and we're gonna look a little bit. We have kind of a big agenda, and as usual, I have way too many windows happening here, so let me just clean up my windows here and get to our class homepage. Can you guys see that now?
Yes.
Got it. So one thing that's been really cool is when you go to the class roster, I can see that students are composing their reflective essays, and they are showing up here. And
yeah, I put mine as an attachment.
I saw that. That's perfectly cool.
Okay, great.
That is absolutely okay. So Sarah, I can see yours, whether you submit it as up.
That's what I wasn't sure about. I made the
Where did
tab
it go?
advanced topic. Go to home. On mine, go to the home tab. Move over to the home.
Okay.
See how there's about and home?
Aha!
I couldn't
Okay,
figure
cool.
out how to post it in
There's your
Common Core
beautiful
10.
essay. Okay, cool. I will fix that so that it links to the home page. That's just probably an error on my part. That's not your problem. That's probably something that I did when I do it. So please, students, if you're watching this in a recording, check to make sure your link is working and that I can find and read your reflective essay like this. And the other thing I'd invite you to think about is there actually are a couple of kids who are enrolled in this class who aren't on this list. So you need to get in communication with me to make sure I have you there. All right, so here we are for tonight's agenda. Hopefully you have learned that we'll always be able to ask questions and get answers here, whether those are about assignments or work or technology. I maintain that I pay pretty close attention to that. We've talked a little bit about our learning curve for Flipgrid, Twitter, and WordPress, and we're starting to think about those not just as tools for like our class, but we're going to start thinking about how they might help us with our communication campaign. In just a few minutes, we're going to be meeting Kira Keene, who is the communication strategist for the Learning Accelerator. They have the contract to help advance digital learning in the state of Rhode Island. And so we're partners in crime with Kira this semester, so we're going to meet her tonight in person. And we're going to have a little strategy and planning session for the October 25th presentation. We get the opportunity to present to about 100 educators from across the state of Rhode Island on Saturday, October 25th. I think we have 45 minutes. And so we have to think about what kind of materials we want to share, what story do we want to tell about our campaign, how far along will we be in our campaign, because our class will only be halfway done or a little more than halfway done by then. So all I want you to do right now is put that on your calendar, because if you have the availability to come on Saturday morning, I think the event is from 10:30 to 11:30 in the Providence Convention Center. That's going to be a great opportunity for us to talk a little bit more informally about our learning curve here. I thought we could begin by viewing and discussing this little video called Rethinking Learning. And what I'd like to do is, rather than try to play it through the interweb like this, how about if you mute your microphone and then just go to the page and click on that link and watch that video. So we'll spend 4 minutes, we'll watch that video, and then we'll have a little conversation about how that video applies to our experiences, what we've been reading and thinking about, what we've been writing about and learning. Okay? So thumbs up on that. You're going to mute your microphone.
I don't know how to do that yet.
Say again?
I don't know how to mute yet.
You don't know how to mute yet? Okay, to mute, you roll your cursor up to the top, and you'll see like a new menu will come up. And it doesn't show up until you roll your cursor up sort of north, straight up. And then you'll see a bunch of buttons: invite people, mute microphone, turn camera.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
I see it.
Okay?
Cool.
All right, so thumbs up on the plan. I'll see you guys back at the ranch in about 5 minutes, all right?
Okay. I actually don't think I have it on here.
Most important thing for kids growing up today I don't think any kid is born digitally native. I think kids are born consuming media, but I don't think kids are born producing media. So almost any kid that you look at and you say, oh, this is a great to digital media, you can trace back. There's a parent, there's a program, there's something that inspired them and developed. Part of the
You like those, Mashi? Oh, that's good. Oh, my computer just shut off.
Okay, so have you finished that? You finished that video?
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about what key ideas did you hear in that video that made sense to you, that you had questions about, that you liked, that related to Rheingold, or that were, noteworthy to you?
I liked how they talked about kids producing media. I like that a lot. That's something that definitely appeals to me. I think that'd be cool.
That distinction she makes between we all get experiences consuming media.
Right.
We don't all get experiences producing media, and that's what this group of educators wants to do.
Right.
Yeah. Sarah, what ideas in this video appealed to you or intrigued you?
My computer actually booted me off. When I was
You're going to have to watch that video.
I watched the first 2 minutes, though.
Oh, first 2 minutes. Poor girl. One thing that... Okay, well, there you go. One thing that the video seems to be wanting to do is thinking about, like, the relationship between learning in school and learning out of school. Why is that such a big deal for them? Why do they seem to emphasize that so much?
I mean, maybe they just want to make it a more active all the time thing. Because,
we never stopped learning out of school.
What do you mean?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Well, we never really, I think of Marshall McLuhan, who came up with the UnClassroom idea that we have the informal learning. We never really stop learning when we're out of school. Actually, we exercise a lot more learning and participate in more learning when we're not in school.
Aha. So this idea, if we're going to be in a society where technologies change, is going to mean we're constantly learning, right? And that you'll have 10 different or 20 different types of jobs, and the idea that you don't just learn what you learn in college and then walk away and you're done. Actually, it's this idea of being learning your whole life and being constantly learning. And that, for a knowledge economy and for an information society, for a technologically advanced society, that's probably an important mindset to cultivate, that idea that you're a lifelong learner and you're learning not just in school, but you're learning all the time. That kind of relates to the UnClassroom in a big way, doesn't it, right? Which is that you're in a situation with this class where you're sort of in charge of your own learning. And I thought it was really interesting that they say, and oh, by the way, it's not just, we're not doing this just to prepare you for work, but also for being a creative person, for being a good family member in a good relationship, and also being a citizen. So the big ideas that are at the heart of digital learning do have a lot to do with thinking about the relationship between play and learning. That's why I thought it was so cool that John Seeley Brown started that video by saying gamers, right, are some of the biggest learners, and they're fusing play and learning, are like completely tied together. But some people will watch this video and say it's a total pipe dream, just a fantasy. What are your thoughts? How might critics react to this video? And is this video really just a fantasy, a marketing ploy for digital learning, or is it really possible or even desirable?
Wow.
Well, what I liked, or what I was kind of confused about, was when the beginning the guy says kids want to be measured to see they're improving. I don't know if that's really true or that's what they want to end up happening.
Okay, that's definitely a questionable assumption that we could interrogate, right? Do kids really like that feeling of being measured, knowing what level you're on, knowing where you are in your journey? Alan, what's your perspective on this? Does this seem like a plausible vision for the future of education, or you have questions about it?
I think it's plausible because, I mean, a lot of the segment of the video was about video games, and one thing about video games is that you are actively involved, physically and mentally. So, I mean, there's a lot of video game, like, I remember I played a Mario typing where I learned how to type via Mario. So, I mean, there are definitely ways you can combine gaming and learning.
Absolutely. My daughter came to visit me last weekend, and when she was growing up, she used to be a big fan of a game called Myst, Riven and Myst, which were these like worlds with puzzles in them. And in the, whatever that was, the late 90s, I guess, or early 2000s, that was a game that captured her imagination and made her feel like she was a problem solver. And I think about how a kid who grows up feeling like a problem solver might be not intimidated to solve challenging problems like global warming, right? Or cultural understanding between the Western culture and the cultures and people of the Middle East. So thinking about how some of the mindset, the kind of determination, the stick-to-itiveness that you need to play a video game, to be able to find a cheat code or get around, solve a problem. Those skills might be actually more useful than educators may give them credit for. So that's a dimension of digital learning as well. All right, I'm going to dial up Kira and see if she will join us. Let's see if she'll come online and join us. Kira Keene. I'm going to just invite her now. Okay, she's been invited. What I'd like to do is, while we're waiting for her to show up, want to share with you a little bit about what I'm hoping you're going to do. We're going to meet Kira tonight, and then after tonight's class, these are the, you can see it says here, this week's, that's actually a typo. These are the non-synchronous activities, the things you do after this class but before next week. We're going to meet Kira tonight. She's from a company called Learning Accelerator. She's going to introduce how she's working with the Rhode Island Commissioner of Education to make Rhode Island the first blended state in the nation. And this afternoon, we did a little bit longer interview, about 20 minutes. And I'd like you to watch this video because Kira's offering us some advice on how to develop a communication campaign. And as you watch, I'd like you to notice the questions that I ask her and notice how the shape of the question affects the response, because you guys are going to be doing an interview activity where you interview an educator. So paying attention to how interviews work is a good thing. Please capture some notes about this video because this video has a lot of key ideas that are going to help us with the campaign. And in some way, that kind of is a good segue for me to introduce Kira. Let me just turn myself back on. Hi, Kira.
Hey, Renee. How's it going?
So glad to see you again. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce you to Sarah and Alan, 2 of the 12 students who are taking this class. Participating in a Google Hangout is not a required activity. It's an optional activity. And so we are delighted to have Sarah and Alan. But
nice to meet you guys.
We're also interested in learning more about you and what you do for the Learning Accelerator. Can you tell us a little bit more about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Renee said, I'm a partner at the Learning Accelerator, and I have way more than 20 years experience in communications in all kinds of different facets of communications. So I was a press secretary for a few years. I've done a lot of campaign work for school board, bond measures, parcel taxes, elected officials. I was a lobbyist, which is really just pointed communications, right? It's all still communications. I've done communications campaigns for foundations, for private companies, so really run the gamut. And how I came to the Learning Accelerator is that as I was raising my own children through public schools, I became really intensely interested in public education and in education reform, and spent really 10, 15 years as a volunteer. And it finally got to the point where it's like, I need to marry my passion for education reform and my skill set around communication. So I have to say, one of the beautiful things about what you're studying is that no matter what you're passionate about, everyone needs communications work. So it could be a company, a corporation, or an issue. And in this case, for me, it was education. So the Learning Accelerator is a nonprofit organization. We've only been around for about 1.5 years. And our mission is to bring blended learning, personalized learning, digital learning to public schools in this country. And we're focused on public schools. I talk a little bit about that with Renee in the interview, because frankly, 95% of all students in America attend public schools, right? That's 50 million kids. So when you're thinking about impact of your work, we really wanted to focus on public schools. So we put together a couple of videos on blended learning that I don't know if Renee has mentioned, but I encourage you to watch. It's only a couple minutes long. And that gives you a really great picture of what we mean when we talk about blended learning. But the Learning Accelerator is trying to come up and discover all the pain points, all the barriers that districts face when they're trying to implement blended, and solve those problems and come up with examples of school districts who have done this, who have fully implemented blended learning, and then push those lessons out to the rest of the country. We're doing something similar with states, and this is where we circle back to your work. We are working with states who want to do blended learning, and Rhode Island happens to be the very first of our state partners. A few weeks ago, we were able to make an announcement, and Rhode Island wants to be the first fully blended learning state in the country. So we're thrilled to be working with Commissioner Guest and RIDE, the Rhode Island Department of Education. And we're, at this point, doing 3 things. We are helping them with that October conference that's coming up that I believe many of you may also be involved in. We are working with them to do some strategic planning. So this is new, right? They're the first state, and we have to think about how really can states help school districts blend. In some instances, it might be just get out of the way. In others, it may be, remove policies that are inhibiting online learning. There's lots of steps that we need to look at through their strategic planning process. And then the third stream, and the stream I'm really going to be very closely involved in, is the communications campaign. They have, as you know, they want to do a public awareness campaign around digital learning. They want to grow awareness around what this whole concept is and support for the department's work. So in many ways, I am doing the exact same work that you guys are going to be doing over the next 12 weeks. And, I'm thrilled to do some thought partnership with you guys. You guys are all digital natives, and Rhode Island, and you're going to bring creativity and perspective and insights that I don't have. And I know Renee's got a great course ahead of you for the next 12 weeks, so I'm really excited to be able to work a little bit with you guys.
So let's find out what questions students might have. You have the opportunity to have a coach here. Our goal is to increase public awareness of digital learning in Rhode Island. What questions or comments do you have to engage Kira in the project you're about to do, which is to figure out how to find a target audience and develop some key messages and communicate with those audiences?
I have a question. If you're just like reading articles on the internet, would you consider that digital learning?
I'm sorry, if you were just reading something off of the internet?
Yeah, would you consider that digital learning?
It's a great question, because this is one of the reasons why we actually, you'll notice in all our materials, we talk about blended learning, because for us it's critically important that there's a blend of teacher instruction, teacher-led instruction, as well as content that you're getting online. And where the magic happens is that technology now can provide really personalized learning to students, right? So if my kid is struggling with fractions and you're ready to move on to decimals, technology will allow those kids to move when they're ready, and then the kids that need extra help, the teachers can identify that and work with them one-on-one or in a much smaller environment. So for us, we actually talk about blended learning as opposed to digital learning, because we think that blend of teaching is really, really critical. But it raises a great point, which is when you're communicating, and we've got people calling this different things, right? Digital learning, online learning, personalized learning, connected learning. It's something that we need to think about on how we're going to overcome that.
I think it's absolutely fascinating, the strategy of calling it blended learning, because I think the phrase responds to an anxiety that some people have, that as technology becomes more embedded in education, that it dehumanizes, or it removes the teacher, or it affects the relationship or relational dimensions of teaching and learning. So I think blended learning is a phrase that has a lot of power because it neutralizes some anxieties.
That's the hope, but unfortunately the word itself isn't totally self-explanatory. So I think you're right, and I think that's what we're hoping for. But in our communications efforts, we really need to go deeper than that and really address that, hey, we're not talking about computers replacing teachers. This is about empowering teachers.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that. Other comments or questions that you have for thinking with Kira about how we're going to increase public awareness of digital learning in Rhode Island, or blended learning?
So I jotted down a few things. When Kira, when you're talking about campaigning, like solve problems and push these lessons out, does a campaign focus on maybe the drawbacks or the critical points that people might have experienced, and then you kind of blemish them out and highlight them as really a good thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting. Often the thought of leading with a negative or focusing on a negative first, if that's what you meant by like kind of a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that we generally try not to focus on the negative. So like if you notice, even in our video about blended learning, we could have very easily, and we thought about it, like, do we list how the United States has fallen to 32nd in reading internationally, and do we really focus on the negatives about the achievement gap? But when you have a very short window within which to communicate, we have decided we really want to focus on the positive, right? What blended learning allows you to do, the kind of the aspirational, visionary goal of addressing the digital divide, addressing the achievement gap, and really making teachers powerful through technology. So we try to a little bit stay away from the negatives and really focus on the positives, but you have to be prepared to deal with the negatives for sure, the negative points.
I really like the phrase you just used, which is making teachers powerful through technology. And I feel like this summer at the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy, we discovered that when teachers feel powerful with using this technology, they're unstoppable and really amazing. But one thing that I guess we are still probing is when this group of young adults reflected on their experience with technology and education, a lot of what they all wrote little essays about this, right? A lot of what they wrote about was Mavis Beacon teaches typing and other kind of, well, we could just say not transformative learning experience.
Not blended learning, honestly, yeah, no, and that is very much what the early stages have been, right, where you bring an iPad into a classroom, and instead of a paper textbook, you're just reading the textbook off of the device. And we actually are running into that. You know, you'll notice LA Unified School District just rolled out, I don't know, like $1 billion iPad program, but had not done any of the work behind it to train teachers, to really vet the content. So that is something that we struggle with, and in fact, the Learning Accelerator says the last thing you should do is buy the iPad or the Chromebook. The first thing you should do is think about how are teachers going to use this, how does this affect teacher learning, train your teachers, really understand what software you want to use so that what's transformative is allowing the technology to do that personalization, not just replacing a textbook with a computer.
Another key idea that you're helping us realize is that I do think some people think if you just buy the equipment, it'll magically happen. So that is a very insightful observation for us to think about. Kira, I have a question for you because students have been reading Howard Rheingold's book Net Smart. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Howard Rheingold, but he's kind of like the media literacy guy for digital age. And he's inviting us to think a lot about attention, about managing the new kind of soft skills we need to navigate in a digital landscape. He's introducing us a lot about the power of participating in online communities, and I guess we're kind of wondering where the boundaries are, right? As blended learning in the context of K-12 kind of blurs out to what adults and people in the workplace are doing, the new ways in which the whole, ecosystem, the whole cultural environment is transforming.
Yeah, I mean, another way to think. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Another way to think about it, which is how I often think about it, is that blended learning is providing 21st century skills to students, and so in addition to addressing achievement and academic achievement, we really see that blended learning helps kids create these other things that are important: grit, resilience, leadership, self-motivation. But what it also does is it allows students to learn 24/7, sort of regardless of if they're in school or at Starbucks or at home or in the library, right? They always have access to their schoolwork. And more importantly, as they get older, you become really lifelong learners, because just because you've left school or you've left elementary school or you've left high school or you've left college, we have the tools, right? We have these now technological tools, digital tools, to truly be lifelong learners, to always take a MOOC, or if you don't know something, be able to access the information on the internet. And it goes back to that kind of different role of teachers. Teachers used to have all the content and knowledge in their head, and they just bleh, right, into the head of the child, and then the student regurgitated it back on the test. Now, they call it that sage on the stage, right? The teachers were the sage on the stage. But now it's much more teachers or coaches to try to help students learn how to get the information from the world that's out there, either through the internet or online tools or primary sources that you can now access online. So I think that speaks a little bit to your point of it's a lifelong journey, and it's a lifelong relationship with technology, and hopefully a lifelong relationship with learning.
Okay, so I have a question that kind of interests me. Are we campaigning to the students or the teachers? Like, who's really our target audience here?
Who's our target audience here?
That is a great question. And in fact, Renee and I spent some time talking about just like the most critical building blocks of any communications campaign. Number one is identifying your audience, right? So for our work, when I think about working with the state of Rhode Island, I mean, that's my very first question to them as well. I mean, they said a public awareness campaign. Well, that's incredibly broad. So we need to crystallize, you know, are we talking to parents? Are we talking to teachers? Are we talking to the business community? Are we talking to seniors? And really get super crisp about that. And, you know, in your case, I think because you have a limited engagement with this campaign, I would certainly encourage you to maybe limit your audience, really think about a prescribed limited audience that you know, because the next important piece is know your audience, right? What's important to them? What are their key issues? What are the buzzwords you do want to use or don't want to use? So you can think about the best way to communicate with your audience.
Yeah, what I was wondering about is are teenagers and young adults a target audience for us? This is something we're going to talk about next week. So in some ways, for this week we're going to keep the target audience question wide open. You'll see when we go back to the website how we're going to approach that, but eventually we're going to narrow. Kara, I'm hoping that in about 2 or 3 weeks we can come back and have you give us some feedback. Then we will have figured out some target audiences, some key messages, and even some vehicles, right, for engaging with our audiences. So we'll be hoping to get your insight and your critical friend feedback as we move forward on this project. So thank you for joining us tonight. We're glad to have you as a resource to our course, to the UnClassroom, and obviously to the folks who are passionate about blended learning and digital learning in the state of Rhode Island. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you guys too. I really look forward to our thought partnership.
Thanks again. All right, so needless to say, your next step is to watch the longer interview. That's the 20-minute interview that's right there on the top. I'm going to just go back to the screen share and show you what's next. Now you've gotten a chance to meet Kara Keene. She has some real insightful strategies about how to think, how we need to start thinking about our campaign. So watch the longer interview and take some notes, and then let's just scroll down to what's next. We're reading chapter 4 from Rheingold, which is practically my favorite chapter. This chapter, I have so many notes on this chapter. Read this chapter 4, and what I'd like you to do is, after reading, just select a meaningful quote from Rheingold and throw it up on the Padlet wall. Right? You guys did this once before. It was very productive, and you got lots of great resources from doing that. And then do the same thing with this really interesting website article, the Rhode Island Report Card on Digital Learning. Same thing. This organization, which is founded by Jeb Bush, you know, he's the brother of George Bush. He gave the state of Rhode Island a C-. Yikes. So find out why some people around the country don't think Rhode Island is doing so much in the area of digital learning. Okay, next up, this is a really big step in the campaign development process. Teachers need time to learn and plan in order to integrate digital learning into the curricula. So during the summer of 2014, 50 Rhode Island teachers participated in the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy. That was staff development program that I ran with my colleague Julie Quiro, who's in the School of Education at URI. Watch this video that features two participants, Amanda Murphy and Dana Hall. You can see that video right there. There they are, Amanda and Dana, two Rhode Island teachers. Then look at the resources they curated by clicking here, and then use the Flipgrid to share your interpretation of their work. They're trying to integrate digital learning into their work. If you could ask them one question, what would it be? So you're going to get introduced to two teachers and think about how might you engage with them and what are they doing that seems useful to you, and what questions do you have about their work. You might also think about how their work relates to what we've been reading and learning about. But do me a favor. Be sure to review and build upon the comments of the other COM 410 students on the Flipgrid before posting your response. This then lets the Flipgrid enable us to have a real discussion that promotes real learning. At any time, if you're wondering how to keep up with the Flipgrid, I have put the main homepage here. This has all of the Flipgrids. You see, I can pretty much see who's watching and who's not. I can actually get really granular with this data. 16 people contributed to the first one, 12 to the second one, only 7 to the last one. Alan, I see from your photo you were the last guy here who shared it today. But make sure that you think about this as almost like analogous to what happens in a class, right? Where you get bonus points for acknowledging the comments of others. That's a big part of how Flipgrid really helps us learn from each other. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about this part 3 where you're going to watch this little video and make a Flipgrid comment?
Nope, no questions.
That's pretty clear. Now, what that's getting you ready to do is prepare to interview a digital learning leader. Your next immediate deliverable for this class is to produce a 3-minute YouTube video featuring a Rhode Island digital learning leader. So we're searching for people who can showcase, that we can showcase to build an understanding of the good things that are happening in Rhode Island regarding digital learning. On this Titan pad, I've created a starter list. Here are some of the people I've run across in the last 6 months that we could interview to raise awareness of digital learning. Pick one of them, right? Find out what you can by, looking online. Go find out what their digital footprint looks like, and then based on that, generate 5 questions that you might ask them if you were going to do a phone interview or a video interview or a Google Hangout interview. They all come from different parts of the state, from Westerly to Pawtucket, from Providence to Newport. So pick somebody that you'd like to reach out to and then put that information right there in the Etherpad. Do you have any questions about the Your Turn activity?
I do.
Yeah.
So we're actually doing it, or are we pretending we're doing it?
You're doing the pre-research, right?
Pre-research.
You're doing the pre-research. You're not actually reaching out to them yet. You're getting prepared to reach out to them. Because next week we're going to look at the kinds of questions you've generated, what we've learned about these people. We're going to kind of think strategy a little bit more deeply. Okay. But we can't really do that until you've done some preliminary work. So this is really phase 1 of the project. It's amazing, if you are a good researcher, what you can find out about people by Googling them. So let's start with that. Now, the very last activity is for you to start brainstorming. What target audiences should we focus on? What key messages should we emphasize? What forms of communication should we use? Put your best wild and crazy ideas on the pad here. Brainstorming depends on having creative freedom in a non-judgmental space. So right now we're going to just let our imagination run wild, right? Maybe we'll focus only on high school juniors and seniors. And we'll really develop a communication campaign that's targeting high school kids. Maybe we'll focus on parents of school-age children, right? Or voters, right, whose children are grown. Who knows? But put your ideas here. We're going to start brainstorming. One thing I'd like to call your attention to is that the Etherpad is a really powerful tool for us, and I try to indicate how I'm making sense of your work by using bolding. So last week you guys reflected on the attention economy, and so I'm taking you to that page now as a way for me to get to know you and to showcase the ideas that I think you're contributing that are super valuable. I use bolding. So Taylor, you made the first comment, and you made this first comment here, and I highlighted this phrase because I thought it was really intriguing. You were talking about how the ads that we see on, they're called native ads, the ads that we see on social media, sometimes we don't even really notice them. We treat them as if they were meant to be there. Sometimes we even give in to them. I thought that was a great point. Jordan, I really liked your observation about how sometimes we look at things out of convenience, and you make this point: mass and media and social media don't necessarily tell me what to think, but they do tell me what to think about. Well, I recognize that phrase, so I wrote, that's the classic formulation by Harold Laswell. And so I'm responding to your Flipgrid, and you should feel free to do that as well, right? So I really liked how at the end of this discussion, as the discussion went on, people started doing that. Right? And so Bill, thank you so much. Bill actually says, you know, Renee, you mentioned that maybe it's addiction or maybe it's not, and then you wrote something has us all hooked, and whether that's a good thing or bad thing is still up for debate. So let's see how we can use the Etherpad experience to do the most engaging kind of work we can. All right, so I think we have come to the end of our class tonight, unless there are questions. What questions do you have about the work that you're doing between now and October 1st?
Who do you think would be the best Rhode Island educator to contact?
Well, you know, I love all the people on that list.
Okay.
And Alan, you have a great interest in public speaking, right?
Yes.
And I'll tell you somebody who's kind of got an interesting career path that you might be interested in, and that's the guy at the top of the list. His name is Brian Jennings. Brian Jennings, before he became a elementary librarian, was a reporter and a cameraman for Channel 10 in Providence. So he's a URI grad, he's trained as a journalist, and he was basically a videographer. He was shooting TV news for a long while before he made this career shift. So I think he cares a lot about public speaking. I think he cares a lot about connecting school to, like, the real world. I think you'd get along with him terrifically. He's a great guy. He's really well connected in the community. I'd say if anybody, they're all really cool people. You could almost throw a dart at any of those people, and I guarantee you would like them. They're all smart and interesting, but Alan, you might like Brian Jennings. He's a pretty cool guy. And Narragansett Elementary School is like 10 minutes from campus. So I think he's cool. Sarah, do you have any questions about any of the people on that list that you might be interested in talking to?
Oh, I knew right away. I'm doing Jack Martin.
Why?
Well, I saw him speak a few months ago on one of our YouTubes, and I just love his presentation and his ideas, and I would love to learn more.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, that's super. All right, so students who are not watching synchronously, you guys are watching the taped performance. You missed a dynamic live class with an amazing San Francisco-based communication consultant Alan got to do some great networking. Sarah got to do some great networking. But we do hope that you join us next Wednesday, October 1st at 7 p.m. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you make sure you tweet, you Twitter, you share. Before I let you go, I just want to show you one little thing, because some of you guys are not really playing on the Twitter sphere, but I want to persuade you why you should. Here's 3 days of participation. I'm keeping track of the participation on Twitter. Here's 3 days of participation from September 21st to today. And here are among the many people who contributed. And some of you, your quotes got retweeted to a wider audience. For example, check out this comment by, I think it's Allegra. No, Kirsten. Kirsten, I was so impressed with Kirsten's Flipgrid that I retweeted it to my audience of 3,500 people, and then Sasha Costanza-Chalk retweeted it. He's a professor at MIT. He retweeted it. So Kirsten made a big splash with her Flipgrid comment, and it got people felt it was important, and that's why it spread in that viral way. So I'm really pleased to see something that looks like actual communication happening here. Sarah, thank you. Last week you used the Twitter to help talk about our communication snafu, but we are just delighted that you are experimenting with how we can make the most of this. This crazy interweb. So thanks for joining me. I'm Renee Hobbs. This is Com 410, the UnClassroom on digital learning. We'll see you guys next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.